Running of a participatory and when we talk of a democracy that is truly people-oriented, the Dr. John Kayode Fayemi administration has more than delivered. In the implementation of his administration's 8-point agenda, a lot of ground has been covered. Running of a participatory and all-inclusive government, infrastructure development for the good of our people, modernizing agriculture to create jobs for the teeming youths in the state, a positive turnaround of our education sector, free and qualitative health care for children, the physically challenged, pregnant women and the aged, resuscitation of moribund industry for the economic revival of our state, development of our tourist centers to international standard, gender equality and empowerment, under which our elderly receive monthly allowances. This is truly the era of see and feel. There is no doubt JKF is piloting Ekiti to a new level. Our leader, you continue to draw the line between selfless service and selfish leadership. Ilufemiloye, Ekiti will never forget your legacy. JKF, the vision continues.
Good evening and happy anniversary. Today, Nigeria is 53 and Ekiti 17. And today we now throw up our special program, our special interactive session with the Ekiti State Governor, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, to talk on October 1st. This day in the history of the country in 1960, you know, we gained independence from the Caucasian imperialists, and Nigeria emerged as a country of many nations struggling for relevance. It is a twin celebration for us here in Ekiti State because 17 years ago, the state was created, carved out from the old Ondo State. Our journey to nationhood, by many believed, had been marked with legions of dashed hopes. But we as Nigerians, we are still optimistic. And that is why we have an optimist in the house to talk about Nigeria at 53, Ekiti at 17. Your Excellency, thanks for coming on the program.
Good evening.
Nigeria at 53, Ekiti at 17. The journey had been long and tortuous, but we are here today to talk on how we can get out of this terrible situation we find ourselves, because when the white men were leaving, we believed it all Eldorado, but we didn't bargain for what we eventually ended up with. Well, I'm not alone in the house to have this evening with the governor. I have my senior colleagues, captains of media establishment in their own right. I have with me the general manager at Adaba FM, Martins Ayola, and Knights of the Catholic Church.
Good evening, guys.
You're welcome. And the General Manager, Progress FM, Ado Fayemi Dari, you're welcome on the program.
Good evening.
And the General Manager, NTA, the only woman in the house, Gloria Toba, you're welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, viewers.
Yeah, you're watching us live on EKTV, NTA, all in Ado. Then you are listening to us on 91.5 FM and Progress FM, all again in Ado. Your Excellency, yeah, Nigeria at 53, Ekiti at 17. So we start from the national level because that affects all of us. And I knew that you are one of the agitators for democracy, and you were in the trenches while we were busy in the school then. I want to ask you, your performance evaluation of the nation right from independence. I read most of the papers today, and what cut across was a question: what is Nigeria celebrating at 53?
What is Nigeria celebrating at 53? Well, I think we're celebrating our unity in diversity. This country had gone through a whole lot of dashed hopes, as you put it. We've gone through a civil war. Not many countries survive civil wars. In fact, the statistical indicators are that more countries separate in the course of a civil war than stay together after a civil war. So that is a significant indicator of where we're at, which we cannot dismiss with a wave of the hand. That's not to suggest that we have not been on a journey without maps. We have been on a journey, tortuous, with avoidable tragedies along the way, with self-inflicted problems, with irresponsible leadership. And this is not where we ought to be. I think there's a consensus in the country that the country and its citizens could be well better placed than where we are now. But even with all of that, I think transition in and of itself is worth celebrating. Or at least, let me say, worth marking. Maybe not celebrating. Marking in the sense that it offers us the opportunity to reflect and ask ourselves very pertinent questions. What is this nation called Nigeria? What does it mean to be a Nigerian? Are we citizens or are we subjects in our own country? And clearly, the old is dying. The old experience of military despotism, of colonial usurpation, of dastardly violence. But the new is not yet born. And in that middle ground of the old dying and the new not yet born, we see a whole range, a melee of confusion. And the challenge for us is how to get out of this confusion. That's why 53 years of flag independence offers us the opportunity to stand by. No nation is natural. Every nation is artificial. There's no nation in the world that you can refer to that was lock, stock, and barrel put on the ground, and it is called United Kingdom, United States, Nigeria. No, every nation starts from imagination. You imagine it, and you begin to walk towards what you want to be. The problem that I see with our country is that there is no consensus, no elite consensus on what it is we want to be as a nation. Once we're able to get that elite consensus, perhaps the journey would be faster with geographic information system rather than the hold hand compass that is leading us on a journey without maps. That's my own humble opinion of where we're at 53. We need to get our bearing right. What do we want for Nigeria? Let's get a consensus. Some people call it sovereign national conference, others call it national conference, some say it must be a national dialogue, whatever it is. We do not have a consensus on what Nigeria is. And we really need that consensus, now more than ever.
Jim Adaba.
Your Excellency, this problem you have identified, is it a product of how we got this independence? First, if you look at South Africa, these people fought battle over the years before they got their independence. But from our own experience, it seems something we got on a platter of gold. Was it the problem we are encountering today is a product of how we got our independence?
I've often had this notion that we got this independence on a platter of gold. Lives were lost. Ivo Valley, 45 labor union strike, the nationalists thrown in jail, Anthony Enaro, Nnamdi Ezekwe, Obafemi Awolowo. It's not exactly true that we got this independence on a platter of gold. We might have reached our status of independence in a relative manner of peace than other countries did. But I don't even think that is the most critical success factor in countries that have emerged from this colonial experience. I think there's something that is more rationally ordered. India got its independence on a platter of gold, and then it fought a civil war that led to the division with Pakistan in 1947. But the British Raj that was in charge of India managed to hand over a country that seamlessly, I think that's the word I can use, seamlessly moved into a modern democracy and has remained one ever since, except for the short period in 1977 that it experienced a coup. Other countries have not necessarily gone through wars and they've made progress. We have a country in Africa, Botswana. Botswana got its independence on a platter, if you want to describe it as a platter. And Botswana is one of the fastest growing economies that we have in Africa, 10% growth rate. So I don't think that is the, as I said, most critical factor. I think we have been unfortunate to experience arrested development brought about by authoritarian rule. The military has played a very critical part in the mess in which we found ourselves. If we have been allowed, and this is my theory, I may be wrong, my own theory is, if our country had been allowed to make its mistakes, even in 62, the whole mess that led to the crisis in the Western region, without any truncated democracy, we probably would have come out of it stronger and a lot more resolved to make a success of our nation. The military, in the manner of military regimes, rescued us from perdition. At least that was the explanation at the time. But we have found out later, to our chagrin, that our military saviors were giants with feet of clay and had plunged us into a far deeper mess than the civilian leaders did. And even when the civilians came back, it was more of militiations that came back than civilian politicians or Democrats. So we ended up with a democracy without Democrats in 1999. People who were really deep, lock, stock and barrel in a military psyche, a military mentality, with the greatest respect to Chief Obasanjo. And we're still trying to wean ourselves off that authoritarian residue without necessarily finding our bearing right. And of course, President Obasanjo left us with a team that is difficult to describe. Let me just put it that way.
Okay, Jim, NTA, your question.
Yes, I want to bring us back home.
Thank you. I'm more comfortable there.
And I want to ask that, being the man in the saddle right now, could you briefly assess the journey of Ekiti State since its creation in
17 years.
17 years ago?
Well, the best way to assess the journey of Ekiti State, I was speaking this morning to the first governor of Ekiti State, the first military administrator, Colonel Mohammed Bawa. On a day like this, he would normally call to just wish the state well, wish me well, and he was recounting his journey into Ekiti, his very first day in Ekiti, when the state was created and he was given the marching orders to come to Ekiti, how there was nowhere for him to stay in the state, and how eventually had to hijack the residence of the justice, the judge of the Ekiti Court, not even the CJ at the time. It was just the judge in charge of the resident judge in Ado Ekiti. And he says he comes to Ekiti now and he just marvels when he sees the physical development that the state has witnessed in 17 years of its attainment of self-rule, if you like. But the development has not just been in terms of physical infrastructure development, important as that is. I think there's a renewed sense of self-pride. If you recall what used to be when Ekiti was part of Ondo State, there was a lot of trouble, perception troubles and real problems. We were the dominant section of the civil service. We were the dominant section of the state, but we were shortchanged. At least that was how we saw it. We were shortchanged. And anytime I talk to the founding fathers who really worked on the state creation process, Chief Deji Fashion particularly, he regales me with stories of what they went through. And don't forget, it was not the only state clamoring for creation at the time. There were far better placed, more influential states, like the Jebu state and a whole number of other states that didn't get it. So I think fortune just smiled upon us, and we owe it a duty not to disappoint those founding fathers in their visions for a state that we can all be proud of as a model of good governance and development in Nigeria. And I think that's what this has been. There's been a whole lot of difficulties in the course of this journey. There was a period that we had 6 governors in 7 years in that journey. And clearly, when you have such a high degree of instability, development is bound to be slow and uncertain. And now that we seem to be on an even trajectory towards consolidated democracy, if you can call it that, we do have to be careful not to encounter any reversal in the process. So fiscal development, yes, we've done reasonably well. Human development, we need to do a lot more to empower people, to create opportunities, to grow the economy in a manner that our people can regain that sense of self-worth that Ekiti people used to have in times past, which would normally show in our sense of pride. When an Ekiti man tells you that, look, me Jelabere is very clearly telling you that I can feed myself, I can feed my family, I don't need you to lecture me about what to do to make a honest living. But unfortunately, that's not exactly where we're at now. We now do Oraisa in Ekiti and everybody is running after His Excellency and this and that. So the good politician is the politician who throws money around, not the politicians who give the people what they truly need in order to make a headway in life. So I think we have a lot more focus to put on human development, but in order to get to that, we need to provide the template in physical infrastructure that will then enable us to grow the economy in a much more sustained manner. So the journey has been progressive. It's been slow in terms of attaining overall self-sufficiency, but I think we're on the right path.
You have the ball.
Stay at home, Your Excellency. 3 years ago, the administration came on board with a development framework.
Absolutely.
8-point agenda. And the 8-point agenda is encapsulated in a phrase.
Making poverty history.
Making poverty history. Now, 3 years after, how much of this history have you made? How will you say, is making poverty history achievable? If, for example, we are looking at next year as the end of your
benchmark.
First half.
Oh, clearly, I would say that making poverty history is feasible, and I would also say that poverty is still the greatest threat to our democratic and development agenda. There's no other thing. Many of the people who do what I was talking about, yes, it may be born out of laziness, but it's poverty. It is when you don't have anything to lose that you run after somebody to feed you. It's at such moments that you eat crumbs from the table of a so-called master. That is when you mystify people who are in public office and you turn them into tin gods because they have turned public office into a money-making venture using your own money, the Commonwealth, to intimidate and oppress you, and you celebrate them for that purpose. It's poverty, but it's not just poverty of want, it is also poverty of ideas. It is the loss of a sense of self-esteem. So when we were talking earlier in the administration about restoring Ekiti back to the land of honor, we were encapsulating everything in that terminology. Because we know that when you are honorable, you don't lose your dignity. And people have been pushed to the point, people are not poor, they have been impoverished by the system. And that is why the responsibility, number one responsibility of anyone in government opportuned to serve, is to find a way to de-impoverish our people. And that's why some of the remedial measures we've taken, because poverty is something that you need to decouple over the long term. But before you are able to do that, certain things need to be done. Whether you call it youth volunteer scheme, taking people out of harm's way, providing them with some stipends to look after themselves, or you talk of what we're doing with the elderly, the social security benefit scheme, or you talk of what we're doing now with pregnant women and young mothers, the conditional cash transfer incentives, or you even refer to our free education program or our free health program. It is to provide a level playing field that no one in Ekiti would go to bed without something in their stomach. That for us is a primary duty of government before we then move to the next level of wealth creation. Because it is when you have managed to achieve a non-poverty status in human development parlance, in the United Nations parlance, that is described as having $1 a day. That's what the statistics call it. $1 a day is 160 naira a day. I don't take that as a measure, because a man who has yam in his farm, who can grow cassava, who has a garden egg and can find some money to prepare a soup, may not necessarily need that. But the 5,000 naira we pay every adult who is over 65 who qualifies for a scheme, that's what? That's just $45 a month. That's more than $1 a day. If you look at that UNDP index of measuring poverty. So to answer your question, if you want to place it at the level of international best practices, yes, we have moved a lot of people out of poverty level in the state. But is that enough? That is not enough. In my own humble opinion, we need to do better than that and create wealth opportunities for our people. And that's where we're at now. By reviving moribund industries, by pushing people into the agriculture sector, by reviving our tourism sector, we are looking at every way in which we can bring about wealth creation opportunities. And when we say we want to move Ekiti in the direction of the knowledge economy by creating the Ekiti Knowledge Zone, by laying fiber optic cable around the state, it's not our most significant achievement that people are seeing, because they don't know the impact of this in the future of this state. But I can tell you without any equivocation that that is what is going to be the most significant achievement of this government in time to come. It's not noticed now, but that's where the wealth is going to come from.
Yes, Your Excellency, you said the other time that no nation was made in heaven, lock, stock, and barrel, and slam on the earth. That the elites come together, they have a vision, and they build a society. And that is why many people are still annoyed with Nigerian leaders that at 53, Nigeria is still taking baby steps in Ekiti State. I want to ask, because I know the elite in Ekiti State must have learned from the mistake of, let me say, Nigeria. I want to ask, do we have a master plan for development in Ekiti State?
Okay. We have a development strategy, one that comes to an end in 2014, and we're busy in the process of preparing another development strategy, which is not done in accordance with Kayode Fayemi's fancy. We go out there, we talk to people. For example, you know what we do with budgets in the state now. I am back on another journey in November. By November 1st, I start going around the communities in the state in preparation for budget 2014. You also know what we're doing in the various communities where we have pushed responsibilities and ownership to the people to develop certain projects within their own communities, so that they can be active agents of governance in their communities. So it is through those processes that we gather the feedback that gets translated into the Ekiti State Development Strategy. If you go to the website, you can download the one that we had between 2010 and 2014, and the one that is going to come up 2015 to 2019. So I would say yes, we have, but the implementation is also a challenge, because our vision sometimes runs faster than our pockets. And when your vision runs faster than your pockets, you have to begin to cut back and live according to your means. And that there's a tendency for certain things to slow down in that process. But I think there's a consensus in Ekiti that our values that we're known for, intellect, hard work, commitment to her people, compassion should guide and integrity. An Ekiti person is nothing but a person of integrity. We seem to have lost our way a little bit, but we're regaining it. Look at our school start results this year. Look at what happened last year that I used to shout all over the state about. Gradually, things are coming back. People may not notice, but Ekiti is regaining its pride of place, and we need to sustain that to go on. That way we won't go in the direction of Nigeria. And if you've had the opportunity to read the papers I've presented in various places in the last year, I keep talking about the importance of focusing on what is happening at the subnational level as against exclusive focus on the nation. Because if you focus on the nation, you miss the total big picture. Nigeria is a basket case in a lot of cases, but the states within it are not necessarily basket cases. I've just come back from the UN. We were talking about MDG post 2015. And why was I invited? Because Ekiti has met certain goals of the MDGs that Nigeria has not met any. Ekiti has the highest life expectancy in this country. We have the highest enrollment figures in primary schools. We have the lowest maternal mortality rate in this country. One of the lowest HIV prevalence. So you cannot just bandy the figures of Nigeria, which is what most people do. Oh, Nigeria is this, Nigeria is that. And then you don't come down to the level and see what is happening at the local level and look at the subnational dynamics. I think it's important not to tar all of us with the same brush, to begin to disaggregate what is happening at the local level and what is happening at the federal level. Nigeria is work in progress. All of us know that. But whilst we're waiting for it to get to its destination, let's do our bit wherever we are. I think that's the only thing that can get us out of this morass.
Yes, I see. Probably I link that with this issue of regional integration.
Absolutely.
From the analysis you've given about developmental things going on in Ekiti State, let us look at this issue of regional integration. If we take the Southwest as an example, with this type of thing you are describing to us, is it not possible to approach Nigeria development from the regional angle?
That's been our argument.
Taking for an example with what is going on in this state, so that other states in this region can queue in and set a sort of benchmark for the rest of the country.
Absolutely. Martin, when we developed the development agenda for Western Nigeria, DAWN, that was the essence of DAWN. When I go to Ibadan every month to meet with my other governor colleagues, the only discussion we have there is to achieve synergy in all of these developmental areas. You've heard us talk about using our mother tongue as the language of instruction in the first 3-4 years of our primary schools. The reason for that is simple. Many of our people will balk at it. I know people in even Ekiti. I have friends all over Nigeria who would tell me in a very derogatory manner, that boy cannot speak Yoruba. We're trying to teach him Yoruba. You will never find a Japanese child, a Chinese child, or an Indian or Pakistani child who derisively refers to his or her mother tongue the way we do. And there is a huge body of research that links culture to development. There was the Fafunwa experiment, the late Professor Fafunwa, when he was at the University of Ife on this. And unless we return to brass tacks, we're just wasting our time. Because there is nothing that says a young kid cannot be a polyglot. Kids learn as many languages as possible. And they do it in a manner that we adults may not be able to. And when a Japanese child or a Chinese child growing up in the UK or the United States goes to school in the morning, learns English, when he comes back home, he speaks Chinese. So he's at an advantage. this is where we think we need to begin this journey back towards regional integration. And there are many things we're doing now. We're working together on an innovation initiative. We're working together on power. We're working together on even regional rail, what we call the Great Western Rail. We're working together. Even on sports, we're talking about a Great Western Soccer Club. We want to turn ICC, the famous ICC, into a regional club, because we know that our people can connect a lot more easily with that. Yes, that's not to say that Ekiti will not keep their Fountain Club or Ondo will not keep their Sunshine Stars, but we need to get the notion of regionalism back to the psyche of our people. And that's the way we think we should do it.
Yes, before your question, let's go for a break. I need to remind you that this is our special interactive session with the Governor of Ekiti State, Dr. Kayode Fayemi, on Nigeria at 53, Ekiti at 17. We will be back after this break. Stay with us.
When we talk of a democracy that is truly people-oriented, the Dr. John Kayode Fayemi administration has more than delivered. In the implementation of his administration's 8-point agenda, a lot of ground has been covered. Running of a participatory and all-inclusive government, infrastructure development for the good of our people, modernizing agriculture to create jobs for the teeming youths in the state, a positive turnaround of our education sector, free and qualitative health care for children, the physically challenged, pregnant women and the aged, resuscitation of moribund industry for the economic revival of our state, development of our tourist centers to international standard, gender equality and empowerment, under which our elderly receive monthly allowances. This is truly the era of see and feel. There is no doubt JKF is piloting Ekiti to a new level. Our leader, you continue to draw the line between selfless service and selfish leadership. Ilufemiloye, Ekiti will never forget your legacy. JKF, the vision continues. Our 8-point transformational agenda represents our vision for a greater Ekiti, where the business of governance is not only transparent, but accountable and responsive, where we create optimum opportunities that will improve citizens' lives and attract investments, where quality education is a right, not a privilege, where good and cheap health care is not a luxury, where our land is evergreen and no single child goes to bed unfed. That is our agenda. Just keep faith.
You're welcome back. This is still the special discussion program with the Governor of Ekiti State on Nigeria 53, Ekiti 17, and this is the second half of the discussion. And this segment, the chunk of it, is going to be devoted to messages and calls. You have opportunity to call and send text messages on this program, and the number to send text messages to and the one to make a call through will be displayed on the screen. The GM, the ball is still in your court.
Yes, I also refer to your reference to traveling. Some people have labeled you as a traveling governor. Apart from exporting your intellectual prowess and possibly showcasing your achievement at home, what do you normally import into your governance from this global exposure?
A lot. I think it's ignorance often that makes people describe some of us as traveling governors. I I just spoke about the UN and the MDG, the Millennium Development Goals. Not every governor was invited for that. If we didn't have anything to showcase in Ekiti, I would not be out there discussing tangible developments and answering questions about our social security benefit scheme. For me, the question that I think ought to have been asked is, if Governor Fayemi is not at home in Ekiti, are there enough mechanisms in place to ensure that governance does not suffer? I think that's what ought to have been the primary concern of Ekiti people, and I believe that is the primary concern of Ekiti people. As the ambassador of the state, my job is not just here. My job is also to sell the state wherever I have the opportunity to do so. But talking concretely about other things that are benefits of this sort of venture. When we started the Kogosi Graduate Summer School, it was a product of a discussion I had with some of our citizens in the diaspora who really were desirous of putting something back home, but they could not leave their relatively cushy positions abroad to come and settle back here. And we found a middle ground. That, okay, when you are on summer break, come here, come and train our people in the latest research methodology that you already are utilizing abroad. And they did, and will continue such other measures. The profile of Ekiti has significantly changed since I became governor. As a result of that, development agencies are paying more attention to Ekiti than they've ever paid attention to Ekiti. If you go to the new irrigation scheme that we are embarking on in Itakpaji, Ero, in Ekiti North, this is an initiative that UNDP, FAO, DFID are involved in. Not to mention several of our other initiatives. If I do not have that strong relationship with development agencies, we all know that federal allocation is not enough to sustain this state, particularly in the last 3 months. We also know what has been happening. It's public knowledge to everybody. Yet Ekiti remains one of the few states. It's the non-oil state, and we're not shirking our obligations. So I think the question should not be why does our governor travel?
What do you normally bring back into governance?
Oh, I bring back a lot. I've just given you examples of what I bring back into governance. But in addition to that, I have here currently a number of initiatives that Ekiti is not even paying for because of such relationships that I have cultivated outside. Be it the Chinese construction that allows contractor financing of our initiatives, or even the irrigation initiative I just spoke about, which UNDP is adding funds to for us, or a variety of our other schemes. I talked about the knowledge zone that we are starting now. We have a number of international organizations that are giving us support for that. And it can only be a product of interaction with those people. You don't just sit in your office and get the benefit of what obtains in other climes if you don't even know what obtains. You need to know what obtains. You need to interact with the people who are in charge of it, and they need to believe that you're going to add value to whatever they're offering you in order to support your activities. But my work is not just limited here. My work does not suffer wherever I am.
Yes, people are sending text messages from outside, and the person, when I read it, he talked about CDAs. He said, Your Excellency, happy celebration. You once talked about creating some CDAs in Ekiti. Will you still do it before the end of this tenure, or we should expect it in your second term?
What are CDAs? I just talked about them. Towns unions are CDAs. Community development associations, I believe, is what they call CDAs. And those are the people we're engaging. Those are the people we're giving funds to. In every single community. We've done in 82 communities now. We're going to do another 95 communities in a couple of weeks during the 3rd anniversary. So CDAs are already very active in Ekiti, and we are also engaging them in other sectors. Cooperatives are CDAs, civil society organizations working in the health sector, in the education sector are CDAs. So we are already fully working with our CDAs because we find them most reliable, and they utilize the funds much more effectively than even governmental agencies. And CDAs they don't dip their hands into community funds, because if they do, they know what will happen to them in their town's union.
Yeah, Your Excellency, you said this morning that for about 3 months now that the allocation, federal allocation, has been dwindling and it's epileptic. And many people are wondering, how have you been keeping the engine of the state running?
Well, it's been tough. I'm not going to underestimate the challenges that we have had to confront with this development. But fiscal prudence also helps. When you don't consume all of what you have, and you're able to save for rainy days, you should still have some room for maneuver. What we just hope is that, and what we're working towards assiduously, is that these fluctuations does not continue in an unrelenting manner. That's what I believe all states are working on.
And the text message now says, how far with the issue of teachers' recruitment?
Well, the issue of teachers' recruitment is there, but it's been handled by the Teaching Service Commission, and I believe the gentleman who asked that, or lady, I'm not sure, wants to know when the letters for those recruited will be released. It's going to be in phases. There are some most critical subject areas that would first be taken into consideration. They're mostly science subjects from what I gather, and then we'll gradually release the other letters as and when necessary.
Then the next message is talking about the moribund Ikun dairy farm, and Ayo from Ikun is asking you about your plans for the farm.
Well, the Kunderi farm, just like the Ire Bricks factory, has been in the market, and we have had 1 or 2 expressions of interest about wanting to take it over. So we expect that Ikunderi farm would go under the hammer very soon and be released to a private sector player.
And there's a correction to the first message that you responded to. The person is talking about LCDAs, Local Government Development Authority.
Oh, LCDAs. Oh, that's a whole different question rather than CDAs. LCDAs are the local development agencies. Well, in terms of timetable, yes, we're still going to work on it under this tenure. I do not know for certain whether we'll be able to complete that work before we run into the election period. But certainly, the committee that is going to work on it is going to be constituted pretty soon.
And this one says, kudos to you, Mr. Governor, especially on your concern for the welfare of the royal fathers and your respect for the traditional institutions. You have also granted autonomy to some deserving communities. But sir, we will appreciate it if you can help us restore our Oba to grade A. Sheung from Ekiti.
Well, Sheung, thank you very much for the commendation. I'm aware of the matter of Ekiti, and it's one that is receiving attention, but I do not want to take any haphazard measure on this. I want it to be done comprehensively together with other deserving communities so that a clear basis can be established for transitioning from one grade to another.
Your Excellency, let's go politics.
Yeah.
Next year, precisely, there will be election in this state and in Osho.
Yes.
Many aspirants are already coming up, warming up. And you even shown the intention of going for second term. Your party and your government, what are you doing that this party does not go into this election in a divided house?
Divided house?
Yes.
Why would we go into an election in a divided house? How do you mean?
Meaning some people contesting under your party.
What is wrong with that? I have not even declared an interest yet. So if anybody wants to contest, it's well within the legitimate right of any member of the party to contest. All I know is that the party has stated its own position, both at the local level here and at the national level, in terms of who they would want to present for the election. I don't think that should necessarily, if indeed these are genuine party members, they would listen to the voice of members of the party when that time comes.
We are getting calls from outside. Hello, who is on the line? Hello?
No call.
We already lost the call.
Yeah.
It won't be as if we men are trying.
Exactly. I was going to protest on my sister's behalf. Well, we've gone beyond Beijing now. This is the Ekiti initiative.
Thank you, Your Excellency. My next question is that
hello, who is calling? Let's quickly take this call.
This is Mr. Peter calling.
Okay, you are on to the governor.
I want to appreciate what Mr. Governor has been able to do for the entire people in the state. I want to really show our own concern. We think as we people with disability have been marginalized in this present administration.
Okay.
Because we have not been able to do, and we have not been able to be part of this. We're speaking series of letters to meet with Mr. Governor, to tender our own, to let Mr. Governor understand where we really belong to in the state and what actually he has for us, for person with disability. Thank you, sir. We want to really know what you have for us. You are having a year now to spend 3 years, and we have been able to tell the concerning person with disability.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Mr. Ojo. I must commend you for your persistence. Yes, you've written to me. I received your letter. I have passed your letter to the Civil Service Commission because you also included some names in your letter of persons with disabilities that you think are deserving of employment. And I believe the Civil Service Commission is working on that. But if you still insist on seeing me, there's no problem with seeing me. Just contact my office and you can come over to see me.
Hello.
Hello? Hello? You're on to the governor? What's your name? Okay, you're on to the governor.
On behalf of the teachers.
Yes, sir.
I'm listening, Mr. Adeda.
Yes, I think
Okay.
Speaking on behalf of I said our commissioner and the speaker of the state.
Did you listen to my broadcast this morning? Did you listen to my broadcast this morning?
No, sir.
Okay. I urge you to please ask maybe the chairman of NUT to share with you what I said about teachers' promotion today.
Yeah, Your Excellency, the level of industrialization in the Ekiti State is rather worrisome.
It is low.
Although you mentioned a while ago that industries that have gone moribund would be resuscitated.
Have been revived.
At the time they will be revived. I want to know if there are plans to even introduce more industries. Because that will solve a lot of problems.
Well, what we need in our environment here are industries that are tied to our natural areas of advantage. Agro-allied sector, for example. And what we're doing in the cassava sector, in the rice sector, bringing in processing factories, is to expand the industrial base of our agro-allied sector. But as I said earlier, what is going to be the game changer in Ekiti is the knowledge zone. Because we would spend a great deal of time training our younger people to turn this place into the outsourcing capital of Nigeria. What do I mean by that? When I was campaigning years ago, I used to talk about making Ekiti the Bangalore of Nigeria. And if you know what Bangalore is to India in terms of IT and outsourcing developmental initiatives, then you would probably understand why we are so passionate about the knowledge zone, laying fiber optic cables, ensuring that we create an opportunity for a lot of our young people who are interested. You see them on Facebook. They are all over the place on social media. But there is another manner in which they can become useful to themselves and make money from the information and communication technology experience. And it could be the destination of choice for that segment of the developmental agenda in Nigeria. So heavy industry, no, because we don't have that advantage here. There's no reason why anybody would want to come here when the port is in Lagos. The skills base there is higher than here in terms of heavy duty industrialization. But agro-allied, yes, and that's where we're focusing our attention.
Hello? Hello, good evening.
Hello?
Hello, please, who is calling?
Hello?
Hello? Can you hear us? We can pick you loud and clear. Hello?
It's lost.
We lost that.
Yes, sir. Your Excellency.
He's not been able to take his own question.
Still, I'll take you back to politics. Aspiration bid for second term have become a vogue.
It has become a vogue.
Yes, not only in Nigeria, but even Nigeria all over the country at various levels. Why do you think it has become a trend? People, whatever they do in the second term, in the first term, they want to go for second term.
I think you're asking a very profound question that deserves a serious response. And you're also right that even in mature democracies, where you have the law allowing for a renewal of term, except the incumbent chooses not to go for it, in most cases, you would always have the party present the incumbent for second term. And I think there are altruistic reasons, genuine reasons, rather than selfish reasons for that to happen. And let's come back home to give the example. We were talking earlier about poverty, and I said that we've used the last couple of years to focus on reducing the poverty level, which is high in Ekiti, to create a level playing field that can then enable us to grow the economy through wealth creation opportunities. The truth of the matter is that it's not easy to do that from ground zero. And Ekiti was almost ground zero when I became governor here. So you probably need a longer time to deepen that process of poverty eradication and wealth creation. Because first and foremost, all the roads that you want to use to carry the goods from the farms to the markets have to be fixed. We've spent the greater part of the last 3 years. I mean, many people come to Ekiti now and they marvel. Some people came to me today and said the minute we entered Ekiti from Kogi State, we noticed the difference. And that's a common parlance everywhere. But having done that, you also have people who will be legitimately cynical enough to say, "Na road we go chop." Yes, he has constructed road. He has done schools. He's renovating hospitals and doing this and doing that. And so what? What about money in my pocket and food in my stomach? They are also citizens and they have a right to their own legitimate interests. So once you create the enabling environment for wealth to grow, then you need to now deepen that process. And I think that's what really calls for it, rather than the simplistic opportunity of wanting to just do second time for second time's sake. And when you go back to history, here in Ekiti at least, when people say second time, we don't do second time in Ekiti because it is turn by turn. I mean, the other day I had Chief Makonjola Ogundipe, the PDP chairman, gave an interview that Jackie and Jenny Ekiti Manche, it's turn by turn. We cannot allow, no matter how well the person has performed, he has to leave the place and let another person come there. And I say, what is the evidence for this in Ekiti? Absolutely none. We've only had one governor in this state who completed a 4-year term. Before that, we have not had 2 governors in Ekiti State who completed a 4-year term. Only Otubani Adebayo has done so and ran for office, and we knew the shenanigans that happened that year with all of the southwest states and the abracadabra of Babaota. So, on what basis are you now going to claim that Ekiti people do not allow second term? What is the evidence for it? There's no evidence. The only evidence that you would put in place, even if you want to go back to when Ekiti was part of Ondo State, Governor Jashin did second term if the military had not struck in 1983. And yet, up till the time Governor Mimiko was still running, people in Ondo State were still saying, no, it is not possible. They don't do second term in Ondo State. Which history? When it is convenient, people bandy all sorts of silly arguments and statistics. It's not so much the time. What has the person done? Has he justified being given another opportunity to deepen the process of change? Or is there a risk of reversal if you put somebody else there? Because I read interviews as an avid newspaper person that many of the people who are entertaining themselves and running around Ekiti claiming that they want to run for office are given all over the place. And I ask myself, I thought what would be paramount would be your agenda that is different from what Fayemi is doing. What is it that you're going to do better than Fayemi that you want to endear yourself to Ekiti people with. That for me is the only position that should sell, not sentiments. Our people are far more discerning than we give them credit for. And we must continue to play in the marketplace of ideas, not in the ground room of sentiments. Because sentiments will carry you so far, it will not carry you ultimately to the destination you want to be.
Okay, GP, before I take your question, let me quickly attend to the text message on the screen. Your Excellency, what is the latest on teachers' relativity pay? Has it been paid? Because we are hearing conflicting stories. Mrs. Ajoke Ahmed.
Well, if you are a teacher, Mrs. Ajoke Ahmed, I'm sure you've checked your paycheck and you've seen your salary slip. You know that is an old story that has been sorted out long ago. I believe you are not a teacher. If you are, you would know.
Talking about pay, civil servants have not been short. You know the term.
With God.
Well, yeah, they've not received the alerts.
Yes, they've not received the alert. I'm aware of that, and I'm very, very concerned about it. We're doing everything to sort that out. But I just also give you an indication of what is going on in the Federation generally. But we're doing everything to make sure that we reduce the pain on our own people in Ekiti.
Yeah, Your Excellency, you talk about this infrastructural development, particularly on roads. We give that to your administration. Good job by all standard, even from our students who visit the state. But there is this point, this Ado effect. What was the problem delaying the completion of this road? 2, what is the problem about this flooding that always occur between Adebayo and this when it rains?
Miami's Hotel.
Yeah.
Good questions. Ado-Iworokwe Faki Road. I think it's even a miracle that we have gotten the road to the state that it is. The agenda was not to complete the road. But I have been persistent and insistent, and I have threatened and cajoled the contractor to make sure that he delivers on the road, and he will deliver. He doesn't have a choice. He will deliver on the road because I will keep on his case and on the case of the federal authorities who have not really been doing their own job as far as payment for all the work we've done on that road is concerned. And this is the problem, the mismatch in our federalism. You ask us to do a road that belongs to you. You approved all the processes. We've spent money on it. We're being owed 8 billion, thereabouts, on the road. And yet, we're not being paid. So it is a big challenge, and that's also partly what is affecting the flooding, because that's part of the job. That road starts from Teaching Hospital up to Ifaki roundabout, and the drainages on the sides have not been properly channeled, and that is really one of the final things that the contractor would have to do before handing over the road to the state.
Yes, and this message says, Your Excellency, what is the latest? Okay, I've read that, and let me quickly ask this ask you this last question. You said this morning you exercised your prerogative of mercy, and 10 prisoners were affected. 2 on death row and committed
to life,
sentenced to life. And my question is this: how did you balance the gravity of the offences with your prerogative of mercy? 1, and 2, How often are we going to have this? Is it going to be far and few in between, or is it going to be frequent?
Well, it's going to be dependent on what the Committee on the Prerogative of Mercy in the state does. I mean, we have experienced people there, the Chief Imam, Bishop Ajakaye, a number of other key people, the Attorney General. So they look at the substance of the cases, and we are not unmindful of the feeling propelled by the question you asked, that victims are not taken care of. We're releasing people who are on death row, who have killed people. That perception is strong, and I wholly and fully empathize with that position. But we look at the likelihood of committing the offense again and the level of remorse that has been demonstrated. If you have been on death row for 16 years and you have not been killed, and clearly under the Fayemi administration, he is not going to sign a death penalty. For very strong principles, I would not sign a death penalty for anyone. Then what do you do with such people? Rather than languishing in jail endlessly, and yet they've come to some recognition of the offense that they committed. I think we have to see justice beyond retribution. We have to see justice in terms of reparation. We have to see justice in terms of rehabilitation of offenders. And it's only when we have a comprehensive perspective on justice that we can begin to really see our justice sector fully developed. And if we're Christians who believe in forgiveness, or Muslims, or people of faith generally, then we must always leave a gap that enables somebody who has gone astray to come back. And you don't know the kind of testimony that gentleman or the two people that have just committed their death sentences to life imprisonment may come up with. I mean, there are people who disagree with those of us who say, as governors, we're not going to sign death penalty. It's a long-running argument. But I am convinced that killing anyone who has perpetrated a crime does not necessarily change the system. We need to look at it in broader terms. Of course, somebody whose family member has been affected is not going to necessarily see the thing from the perspective that I am looking at it from, which is probably clinical and human rights driven rather than emotional. But I just cannot bring myself to, I've just been silent on it. I've not signed a single death sentence since I became governor here. It's not that they haven't put people on death sentence. I just cannot bring myself to sign off anybody. And it's not timidity. I may be a pacifist, but I'm not timid. I just cannot sign a death sentence.
Your Excellency, it's been another wonderful evening with you on this special program on Nigeria at 53, Ekiti at 17. I hope that although I pray every night for this, that before our generation will fizzle out, we'll come out, we'll see citizens with this hand on their chest, and they will say, I pledge to Nigeria, my country, to be faithful, loyal, and honest, to serve Nigeria with all my strength. I pray that we achieve this before our generation. Your Excellency.
I join you in that prayer.
Yes, my senior colleagues, the General Manager at APA FM, thanks for coming on the program, Martin Zayola, and the General Manager NGA, Ado Gloria Toba, thanks for coming, Madam, and the General Manager, Progress FM, Ado Olonfemi Dari. And to our people out there, we should continue praying for the greatness of our nation. We have nowhere to go. Before we go, we have to recognize the people on the entourage of the governor. Mr. Tayo Ekundayo, the Honorary Commissioner for Information and Civic Orientation, Mr. Olayin Kayode, CPS, to Mr. Governor, Elder Adewale Ayaga, Elder Idowu Adebiyi, members, Board of the Broadcasting Service of Ekiti State, Barrister Shina Awelewa, Director General, Broadcasting Service of Ekiti State, and the two GMs in BSCS, Mr. Wale Ojo and Idowu Guntrashi, ably led by Barrister Shina Awelewa, and Mr. Odun Ayo Ogumola, SA Media, to Mr. Governor, Babs Daramola, SA Media, to Mr. Governor. Next episode definitely will be the Yoruba one.
Absolutely.
Because I know you love talking to your people in your language, and that's why you've been clamoring in.
When I get accused of not speaking, it's an opportunity to let people know that I speak.
Yes. And I'm sure you are good in Ekiti too.
Absolutely.
Let's do it again next time. I am Olupopola, the regular anchor. Good night.
Our 8-point transformational agenda represents our vision for a greater Ekiti, where the business of governance is not only transparent, but accountable and responsive, where we create optimum opportunities that will improve citizens' lives and attract investments, where quality education is a right, not a privilege, where good and cheap healthcare is not a luxury, where our land is evergreen and no single child goes to bed unfed.